This is a slideshow with commentary of a 2002 Honda Rancher ES two-wheel drive I picked up on Facebook Marketplace in December 2023. I've owned 3 Honda Recons in the past. This is the first Honda Rancher I've ever owned. This is the Facebook Marketplace listing for the Rancher. Alright, let's break this down. New battery starts right up. The seller was willing to sell me a battery that came with it. Wasn't the right size for the machine. The back brakes don't work. Okay, might just need to be bled. That doesn't make any sense. They're non-hydraulic. They're cable operated. Great little rig that will last. Yeah, that's what attracted me to it. Two-wheel drive. Could use new tires. I might replace them before sale. Not open to trades, 1500 or best offer. Originally this was listed for $2,000, and then the price was reduced to 1500. I didn't take any pictures or film anything when I went to see the four-wheeler. It did look like it does in the pictures. It's in pretty rough condition, maybe left outside at a camp. Once warmed up, it did start and run fine. The choke was broken off inside the carburetor, so that was not operating correctly. When I was shifting into the higher gears, third, fourth, fifth, the engine seemed to lose power, like there was a clutching issue maybe. I wasn't really sure. I offered the guy $1,000 for the machine. He was hesitant, started negotiating. I asked him to deliver it to my house about a half hour away. He delivered it to my house in the rain at night, and I started looking at the machine, seeing what I was getting myself into. I liked the fact that it was two-wheel drive, less to go wrong, less CV shafts up front, no front differential, nothing to break over time. Somebody left it at a camp, and someday that's something I'd like to do with it. Leave it alone for a long time and have something that I can pull a cart around or hit the trails, cover some ground quickly in. Everything seemed pretty straight on it. The racks weren't bent. The headlights worked. Tail light worked. It really looked like it was just left outside unused. I started doing some investigative disassembly on it. Noticed that the rear brakes were completely locked up. The shaft was not turning. It was locked into position. After I freed up the over-tightened rear brake cables that attach to the rear linkage, it freed right up, which is something that I'm not used to seeing on these Honda rear brakes. Usually they're froze up on the shaft and usually take some work to get apart. I was pleasantly surprised when I removed a cover and the brake drum. I found seemingly new original rear brake components that weren't worn and could be reassembled. I cleaned them up and put them back together. While I was under that rear fender, I noticed some janky wiring. While I was also there, I changed out the rear diff fluid. It looked like it hadn't been done before, or if it had, a long time ago. Something worth doing. As I was spinning around the machine, I opened up the trunk. I asked about the original toolkit and owner's manual that came with it, and he said it wasn't in there. But I found some of the components as well as some tire plug tools, some tire plugs, the emergency shifter. I started spinning the other way around the machine and came to the rear brake pedal lever. That was locked up tighter than Fort Knox. I've gotten a lot of these rear brake pedals off before. Never one this bad. Never this bad. I tried to pry the rear brake pedal lever off with a tapered punch, a big tapered punch. And I got it to move a few millimeters, but still couldn't really get it moving. It was solid on there. I couldn't find my torch, so I decided to put it on the back burner. I kept looking around, discovering things, checking out stuff like the battery box area, the fender damage. And then I started ripping the plastics off all the way down to the frame. When I got the plastics off, I took a look at them. They were in alright shape. They had some cracks and some breaks in them and stuff, but nothing that was going to cause them to blow apart. Nothing that required an immediate repair. Here's some pictures of some plastic parts and the racks that were off the wheeler. I got the choke plunger out of the carburetor. Just start thinking about taking that off. I wasn't going to take off the exhaust originally. I was going to leave that on. On the handlebar, the pivot pin for the park and brake and the reverse selector, that was backed out when it was delivered. I thought that was kind of odd. I put that in and everything seemed fine with the cables. I got the carburetor off and well, I heated that rear brake pedal lever up to about 1,000,000 degrees. Eventually it came off after a few heat cycles, came right off. There's a couple of seals that are inside that piece, melted a little bit. They were just getting bound up inside there trying to take it off, so no big deal. I bought a new battery for the wheeler, the one that it came with, a Yuasa OEM. I always try to get these Yuasa batteries for any of these metric wheelers. They seem to last longer. I worked at a power sports dealer long ago, and my old boss said, they're made with virgin lead. It's a higher quality product, so I went with that. I like purchasing batteries without the electrolyte in them, so I know exactly when the battery's activated and when it got its first charge. Next up, I spent some time cleaning plastic parts. I used a drill brush and some Dawn dish soap for this step. I have a big sink, which makes it easier. Some of the parts, like the fenders, still didn't necessarily fit inside it. This could be done just as easy outside with a hose and a spigot. Where I'm at in Maine, it's cold right now, and it makes it easier doing stuff inside. Some of those original tools from the toolkit I cleaned up on the wire wheel on my bench grinder. Then on a warm day, it was outside to clean up and pressure wash the wheeler. I taped off the atmospheric vent from the engine and the intake and cleaned it up. I used Dawn dish soap in this step and applied it with a plunger sprayer that you can see there, something you would use for an outdoor application. All cleaned up back in the garage. Once everything was cleaned up, I wanted to check the fan and it worked fine. When I looked at the electrical fuse box on the machine, there was some stuff out of whack. One of the fuses had the numbers turned upside down, which in itself, no big deal. It doesn't matter if fuse ain't directional. But the fan fuse was blown, so I had a concern that the fan might not work. I set the spare fuses up how it has on the diagram. There was some other stuff going on in there when I was looking at it originally. Normal Honda carburetor. I did not purchase a rebuild kit for this, which usually I'm only using the inlet needle and seat for anyway. What I did was the right thing and left the carburetor dirty as I took it apart. Nope. If I would have done that again, I would have went ahead and just cleaned it up before taking it apart. I was fighting dirt that I was putting in myself the whole time. I didn't see a whole lot of ethanol breakdown, just that solid sediment in the bottom of the bowl. These jets were clogged. The main jet was fine, usually is. The other jets had some obstruction. There was some sediment that was hung up on the flow dampener at the bottom of the carb. The inlet needle and seat seemed fine. Nitrile tip needle, non-serviceable brass insert for the seat. The vent lines on this thing were just all junk. I still haven't replaced the carburetor vent lines yet, something I intend to do. I picked up some windshield washer line at an auto parts store, not rated for fuel, gas, things like that. But that may end up going on a lot of the vent lines. I read online somewhere that this plunger assembly, the primer plunger on the bottom of the carb, typically leaks. I Didn't see any evidence of that, so I left it alone. There's the toolkit after getting cleaned up, getting put back together. I took the trailer hitch off and painted that. I ended up taking off the exhaust, something I wasn't going to do originally. I've had problems with studs breaking off the cylinder head, but these came off fine with some penetrating oil. I cleaned up this nice stainless shield, and I ended up painting the rest of the exhaust. Used the cheapest high temp paint I could find, 2000 degree rated. The seller included an Amazon choke cable with the sale, so I started diving into that to see if I could get that plunger assembly and cable to work. I had to modify the end of the cable to work with the plunger it came with. Not a good sign to start. Here I am reinstalling that rear brake pedal lever with some grease on it, attaching the rear brake linkages, lubing them up. They worked fine. Carburetor reinstalled back on the machine. I wasn't going to do anything with the plastics originally. I wasn't going to hit them with a heat gun or touch them with a torch or hit them with any specialty products, paint thinner. I don't know what it is. Boiled linseed oil, paint thinner, 50-50 mix. That's something I've read. But decided to go ahead and do it. My wife spent some time with the heat gun, maybe an hour, maybe a little bit more. I don't know. The plastics came back a lot. They're not perfect. The color's not all the way back, but they're significantly better than what they were before. It didn't take her long to get good at it, and she made pretty short work of it. Here's a picture my wife took of me starting to reassemble the wheeler. When I dumped the gas, some pine needles came out and some little pieces of rocks and stuff. The gas seemed alright. It was still generally clear. Nevertheless, I did not reuse it. I noticed the front brake vent lines were damaged when I was putting on the front fender, so this was a good opportunity to fix those. I replaced them with that windshield washer line from Advanced Auto Parts. Here's a picture of the front rack and fender going on, and a picture of all the parts I had at the time back on, minus the mud guards that go on the fenders. I got some parts in the mail. Did an oil change. The oil filter was real bad. That went off without a hitch, no problem. Oil, same kind of thing. Really dark used motor oil. Nothing alarming, no metal. So at least an oil change was done when the cylinder broke in. I had this old bottle of 1040 Yamaloo ATV motor, so whatever oil, and it moved with me several places. I've had this bottle for 10 years plus and wanted to use that oil in the machine, so I used that up first. The spark plug was rusty and crusty, and I was going to pull it anyway, so I was going to replace it. When I took the plug out, it wasn't talking to me like there was any kind of problems or anything like that. Everything seemed fine with it. I started up the machine and idled it outside for about an hour, hoping to see that fan kick on. I never saw the fan kick on. The oil cooler reached about 120 degrees. That was about it. I don't know what temperature it kicks on. I'm sure I'll find out eventually. Here in Maine in the Northeast, it's pretty cold. Maybe that only kicks on in the desert or hotter temperatures. I don't know. Took the wheels off, brought them to Walmart, had them unmounted and disposed of those old tires, cut the valve stems, cleaned up the loose rust with a couple of wire brushes, and they turned out okay. Used 1 can of gray gloss, front and back, sprayed both sides, and they looked alright. I had to buy 1 new Honda hubcap and replaced all 4 valve stems. Here's the wheeler sitting on its stand in the corner waiting for tires and wheels. I had to drill an extra rivet hole where the fender was cracked and broken, where one of the rivets held it together with. Here are those mud guards going back on after I got those new clips. The wheeler sitting in its spot, waiting for wheels and tires. I got the tires in. I ordered the wrong set. The four-wheel drive tires for a Honda Rancher are different than the two-wheel drive tires. I went on the Amazon listing and didn't cross-reference the Honda parts diagram. When I did that, obviously I saw my mistake. I sent the two rear tires back, and the company I bought them for on Amazon was good about everything. They charged a restocking fee, but it didn't end up being a $200 mistake, just a $30 one. And that's where I'm at now with a 2002 Honda Rancher electric shift. I'm looking forward to seeing those tires go on and getting some riding in.